Sometimes you just have to break things. And I have been there. And guess what? I am sort of there again with my current brand, Author Elevate, and with my whole focus with this podcast and my YouTube channel. Now, don't freak out. I'm still doing podcast episodes. I'm still going to be doing videos, and I am still going to be moving ahead with helping authors. Nothing changes with that. My clients are still amazing. I'm helping them, and I'm taking on more clients. However, I am going to be shifting how I show up and doing some consolidating and also clearing out a mental load, which is yet another pivot I've done this year. And oh my goodness, sometimes I feel like I pivoted so much that I just kind of turn in circles and get dizzy. But I am really excited about what this means for the future of how I'm helping all of you amazing authors out there. And I hope you do tune in for the rest of this episode of the Author Elevate podcast, the final episode of the Author Elevate podcast, so that I can share all the details, give you some tips and encouragement on how you can apply it to your author life, and also give you some sneak peeks about what is coming next. So, real quick, this is actually not impacting your podcast listening at all in terms of the RSS feed, which is that feed that sends my podcast to all these different podcast listening apps like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those things. You can keep listening to me on those places. That is not changing. What will change is the name of this podcast. I'm going to be changing it to a new name that I've already picked out, but you'll get to find out in the future because I'm going to do a little bit of a reveal. Probably not too much because right now my life is crazy, but I'll have a new name for this and I'll have some new podcast art. But the thing is, you're still going to get the same awesome, great content. So no worry about that. You don't have to do anything. Now, if you are the kind of person who has been watching some of these episodes on my YouTube channel, I am shutting down the Author Elevate YouTube channel on October 19th, 2024. And all of my best, most awesome, relevant content, including those amazing, amazing interviews and tips and tricks and tutorials, those will be moved to my personal YouTube channel, Janina Polito, which will be getting a nice facelift and be my hub for my author help brand, for my author brand, for all of those things. This is very standard. I'm sure you know plenty of authors who do writing tips on their YouTube and then also talk about their books and also have interviews and all of that stuff. It's going to be something like that. So if you're the kind of person that you want those tutorials, if you want that visual and you want to make sure that you're following me on those places, do make sure that you hop over to the Janina Polito personal YouTube channel so that you can do that. I'm also going to be shutting down the Author Elevate social media accounts on Instagram and Facebook and just consolidating everything under the Janina Polito author brand. This again is very standard. I'm sure you can think of plenty of authors who just have their name and that's their brand and they have the resources and etc. So if you're not going to do anything else from listening to this podcast episode, please do make sure that you do that so that we can continue hanging out together and you can continue to keep getting the awesome interviews and tips and tutorials and all those fun things that you expect from Author Elevate and really that you expect from me, Janine, as some of you have probably been following me from Indie Book Magic with H.L. Burke and then Own Your Unique Words, which was more very market focus and business, and then Author Elevate with Amy Williams, and then solo a bit, and now I'm moving on to this new brand. You guys are amazing. It's still going to be the same awesome Janine, just even more awesome and be even more lean into the cool stuff. So that's all good. So in terms of why I'm doing this, my whole reason behind it, really it came down to the fact that I started feeling like the Author Elevate brand didn't really fit me all the way. And that actually makes sense because the Author Elevate brand was originally created to grow into this bigger business, to have all these other editors as part of it, to like create almost this agency. And I was going to be doing it with Amy C. Williams. And that was great. And if you listen to Author Elevate with that, she was doing stuff with me. We were co-hosting the podcast. It was fantastic. But then last year, a little bit after the Uncommon Universe press shutdown, where I shut down that publishing house that I'd run for 7 years, she let me know that really she needed to move on. Her family life was crazy and she had a lot of other things she needed to do and to focus on. God was opening new doors in her life. And I'm like, that's great. Go ahead, move on to where you're being called to be and do. And so I, at that time, was like, I'm just going to make this work solo. But the thing is, it was a whole brand that was never designed to work solo. It was never designed to be that kind of focus. And Now, at the time, with already having shut down this publishing house that I'd invested blood, sweat, tears, prayers, finances, everything in for 7 years, I was in no place to even think about shutting down a podcast as well, a whole podcast brand. Then that I just was not there, and that's okay. And I have no regrets about all the amazing content I did and fantastic interviews and all of that, which is why those things are coming over to my personal YouTube channel and why they're staying here. It's why I'm not going to shut down this RSS feed and totally start a new one, because I love that stuff and I want to make sure it's still available for people to enjoy. But that being said, it wasn't where I was anymore. And when I tried to do like an Author Elevate YouTube only channel, that was kind of a way of me trying to figure out, what am I doing here? What do I enjoy doing? What's not fitting? And that was over this past year, just 2024. And I realized that what wasn't fitting actually was the Author Elevate brand, because it was associated with this agency, with this whole dream that ended up not being a thing. And that's okay. But it's sort of like I was hanging on to this empty storefront. You know, when everyone else needed to move on from the business, I wasn't giving myself permission to say, no, I'm being led in different ways. I need to go into different angles. I need to do some different things. I need to give myself permission to move on as well. I wasn't giving myself that permission. I was kind of getting stuck there. And you may or may not know that I am on the autism spectrum, and I also rely on routine a lot to help organize my brain as someone who has a dissociative disorder. That means sometimes that I can get stuck into ruts where I kind of do things because I need to do things, because that's my pattern, because that is how I function throughout the day. I just keep doing them. And then that's why I take time to evaluate, because otherwise I think I would just kind of just keep moving in circles and not really be moving forward where I need to. Because as we all know, growth and change is part of humanity. It's part of life. It's part of walking with God. It's what you do. So once I really got to that place where I was like, wow, this isn't fitting me anymore. Of course, I talked with some friends, and I talked with one. I am blessed with some wonderfully kind and blunt friends. And I say that in the best way, because they will both encourage me in various ways, but they also aren't afraid to say, I don't know if that's a good idea. You don't usually do things that way. Are you sure you're going to stick with this? Like, they'll call me out on things, and that's super, super helpful. Again, make sure that in your writing circle and your life circle, you have people that will both choose to be close enough to you to like encourage you and to go through the hard times, but who will also say, yeah, about that, this isn't working. And when I talk to one of my friends about, I don't think I'm feeling this Author Elevate thing anymore, they're like, yeah, you haven't been for a while. And I'm like, excuse me. And she was like, yeah, I didn't want to know to tell you this, but you've definitely been really having to like try to make this work for a while with the brand, and you love what you're doing, but you definitely are fighting with this brand, and just let it go. And I was like, well, that's easy for you because you don't actually have to do the work of letting it go. But I have in turn also encouraged this friend to have to make some hard things and such. So she's like, well, this is what we do. And that was great. And that was actually really encouraging. And then I also spoke to some other friends and spoke to my husband. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a thing. And I needed to give Author Elevate my best shot for the last year solo to really have the data to know this isn't fitting anymore. So I am really, really excited to kind of have that freedom to let that brand go, to let that name go, and to move into the new areas where I believe that God is calling me to speak, where I have the inspiration, education, and experience to speak and all of that. So yay, that is really cool. And another part of this that was something that I really had to work through was carrying something that I couldn't carry. So there's this concept we have called mental load, and that's kind of all the responsibilities that you keep in your head, all that emotional work, all that thinking work that you have to do to keep in your head to just function. It's that processing, it's the emotions, and it can be a lot of work. So if you work at a job, then part of your mental load when you're at work is maintaining whatever you need to maintain at that job. If you're, trying to keep track of procedures or how things get done or who needs this task or what's going on there, or how you ring someone up with a check, any of that, that's part of your mental load. And we can only carry so much in our mental loads. That's just part of life. That's part of God giving us these amazing, but these finite brains. We cannot care about the whole universe. It's one of the reasons why social media can be so overwhelming, because you can very quickly just get too much information that overloads your cognitive processing abilities. Our brains weren't designed to know all of those things. And I can speak to that as someone who both has, a brain that gets overloaded, but also someone who comes from a background in psychology and cultural studies and processing. We're just not meant to know all of that. We can't. We can't work through it. And in the same way, I was finding that just carrying the mental load and the hopes and dreams of this project and this agency business that I had this vision for in the past, that was too much. And carrying the mental load of trying to keep these extra social media channels going was just too much. And it was taking up space for something I wasn't even really using. It's kind of like I mentioned to a friend, it was like having an extra house. And this friend is also a business coach. And I was like, it's like having to maintain this extra house that you're not using, but you're still paying for the utilities and you're still paying for a security system and you're still doing this. And you're aware that there's this whole space that you're not using right there that you have to do some things to try to maintain, but also you're not using it. And it's not where you're living. And that's what I was dealing with having this Author Elevate space online with the social media accounts and everything. I'm like, this is not my primary space, but I'm having to pay rent on it anyway. And I can't do that anymore. This is not where I'm feeling called to do. Right now, I'm not feeling called to do any kind of agency, to run any kind of agency. I need to make space to make sure I can continue to be there for my clients and write books and help out in different ways and be available for new opportunities. I need to let go of this space. And that's what I'm doing with this. And so when you think about this, again, this is not a matter of breaking anything. It's more a matter of just letting things go and giving myself permission to move on to where I want to be in the future. So if you're thinking about content, I'm really excited about that because it's going to be leaning more into what I love best. Instead of thinking, oh, I'm Janine, I'm the marketing person, and I have to constantly think about the best marketing tips, I can really lean into the things that are close to my heart and that I know are going to help people. Things like mindset, things like figuring out your story in advance, things about how to make sure that you're creating the kind of author life and career that you're enjoying. Things like helping you to navigate differences and ups and downs in author culture and in the publishing culture, not just the industry, not the business, but how people are acting and behaving in that business and how it creates different things and why people are acting certain ways and how you can choose to interact with other authors and with the readers and what it all means and how you can do it best in a way that makes sense for you and your amazing, amazing, unique brains. I am so excited for that. Don't worry, there's still going to be plenty of practical takeaways. There's still going to be plenty of tips and tricks. I'm excited about doing some tutorials on my YouTube channel that are actually like me walking you through something step by step on my screen. But I'm also really excited to continue leaning into things like the interviews where you learn from authors about how they're navigating all of this. And we really develop a space to talk about what is this author life actually? And oh my goodness, isn't this just weird? Why is it like this? And how do we navigate this? And how do you actually keep your head on straight so that you can continue to write those books, so you can continue to create what you want to create, so you can continue to exist as a creative with your unique goals without going crazy, without feeling like, it's just too much. I am really excited to actually fully be in that space and not feel like I have to be part of this Author Elevate agency thing where I'm following these brand ideas that really weren't where my heart was anymore. And again, you might look back and say, wow, Janine, for your YouTube channel, you weren't even doing that anyway. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I look back and go, wow, I was just creating things that were more aligned with what I wanted to do anyway, but I need to clear the branding up so that we're all clear on what's going to happen here. And you're not surprised when you show up and every single episode isn't just some kind of magical tip. By the way, magical tips don't exist. Fun fact there. They don't exist. But there are plenty of things that you can do to customize what you're doing and have it make sense for you and your brain and to figure out how to navigate when things happen and how to figure out your story when things explode and all of that stuff. Super happy to be there for that. But really glad to release the expectation of being this tipmeister who's constantly like on the writing and marketing circuit and talking about all like the hard details. I love data and details, but I like to talk about it from a human angle because guess what? We are all humans doing this, and humans change data, and humans react to things in ways that you would never think they'd react to. It's fascinating. And I want to help you to be able to figure that out better so that you can make the best choices for you and that you can get the sales you want and or the reads you want and or the connections you want and get where you need to go. So that is what things are looking forward with not Author Elevate, but this future podcast that I am doing that will be on the same channel. So again, if you're listening to this, you don't have to do anything, but if you see the name change and you see the art change, it's all good. Just a highly consolidated, more refined, focused, but still the same Janine and the same awesome content. Again, if you are following me on any of my socials for Author Elevate, whether it's Instagram or whether it's Facebook, make sure that you've hopped over and you're also following my author accounts because that's where things are going to be consolidated. And make sure that if you had any interest in watching the videos that I make sure that you are subscribed to my Janine Ippolito author and Author Help YouTube channel and not the Author Elevate channel, which will be getting taken down October 19th, 2024. Again, thank you so much for listening and hanging out with me. It's been great, and I look forward to many more fun episodes and content and interviews and everything else in the future. This is Janine Ippolito. Go forth and be awesome.